for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock. If you like what you hear on the show, subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter at broadwaydrumming101.substack.com. That's Substack, substack.com. The Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter is your one-stop shop for everything you'll need to know about playing drums for Broadway musicals. When you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll learn about what it takes to be a successful pit musician with content delivered directly to your email inbox 2 to 3 times a week. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you'll have a backstage pass to the world of a Broadway drummer playing on a hit show. As a paying subscriber, you'll receive behind-the-scenes access to the life of a musician who makes a living on Broadway. You'll also be able to read every post, not just those occasional free ones. You'll get access to all newsletter issues in the archives and have an ability to participate in subscriber-only comments and events. If you become a founding member for a gift of only $75, you'll receive discounted private drum lessons and a 25% discount on future promotional products. Thank you for listening.
Greg Germann has been touring worldwide, playing the drums for various touring productions for the past 15 years. He grew up in Deer Park, Long Island, attended Queens College, started composing film scores, and played with various artists in New York City and subbed at various Broadway shows. Over his career, he's performed with such artists as Ben Vereen, Sir Roland Hanna, Antonio Hart, Jimmy Heath, and many, many others. When he came back to New York City after touring with the show Wicked, the beginnings of his debut album, Tales of Time, was conceived. This album, Tales of Time, conveys that he's more than just a sideman who can play a part in a Broadway pit. He's also a band leader and a solo artist. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Germann. Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Greg Germann. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's been a while since we've seen each other in person, and we've been trying to get this podcast together for months, but due to scheduling conflicts and other things, it didn't happen, but it's happening now.
Better late than never.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You were born in Long Island.
Long Island, yep. Born and raised.
And being in Long Island, people generally have houses. Did you have a musical memory where you saw somebody playing drums at another person's house? Did you see somebody on TV? Did you have a musical family? What was your thing that made you say, you know what, I want to play drums?
Kind of all the above.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, my father is a musician. So my dad is a saxophone player. His name is Ray Germann, and he used to play with Lionel Hampton's band. You know, he used to work for. There was this contractor like before like Keller and those guys. There was this guy named Mel Rodman, and he sort of did all the Westchester. So my dad actually did play with the Temptations. Like,
wow.
And he would get hired to play like with the horn section. Do like a one-off or whatever in Westchester. And so, music was always in my house. But the thing that's funny is my dad was sort of a, like kind of like a jazz, it's like jazz and nothing else kind of thing. So, well, not jazz and nothing else, but like he didn't want me just listening to like rap music and heavy metal and all that stuff. So when I started playing drums at school, he made me a mixtape that had like, Joe Henderson, Buddy Rich, and hearing Buddy Rich was like the thing that made me go, okay, he's just playing rudiments just a lot faster and a lot cleaner than I probably ever will. But it inspired, it was that choice of like, I can inspire to try to be great like that, or just be like, I don't need to do this. So I just started, like, I think it was like the bugle call rag. And I heard him go, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's all like flams. And I'm like, that's amazing. I was like, I want to do that, And then the first drummer I saw live was actually Billy Cobham. And I just remember, was it the Red Baron, the one who's playing and the double bass thing at the very end? I was just like, I've never seen that. That's so cool. And then the next like big thing that I remember, I mean, I saw a lot of concerts, but the thing that really hit me was, I think I was a junior in high school, and that's when the Miles Davis tribute band came out. And that was with Tony Williams, Wallace Roney, Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, and Ron Carter. But what was cool about Westbury is they did the thing where like Tony would play and he'd face you, and then they would shift it, and then you see the side of it. And then they shift it again, and then you see him from the back.
Oh, my God.
All of that, like Tony, like at all the angles, it was like the coolest. It was just the coolest, and the energy and just the ferocity he played with, the vibe, everything just, it's wonderful.
Wait, that's
the same thing. The way he plays the rudiments, just like, Swiss Army triplets around the drums, but it's still the same stickings. It's just he does it differently, So then I started connecting the dots. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
That was that theater that's in the Round in Long Island. Oh yeah, I played there once, and it's very cool to have that stage turn around. Man, that must have been a treat to actually watch Tony Williams from all different angles before YouTube.
Absolutely. It was way before YouTube. I mean, when I was in high school, I used to come home every day, and there was this video. If anyone's a Tony Williams fan, it's like one of my favorite things. It's called Tony Williams Live. I might even be on YouTube now, but live in New York. And he just plays like this opening drum solo, like, and it's like, it's just the power he played with, but so clean at the same time. And he's doing like, eventually he plays, I think, like Blackbird and songs that but he does like different jazz arrangements of it and stuff. It's just a really cool, and just getting this, I would just watch it and like see how he like moved around the drums and just try to emulate, then I go downstairs in the basement and try to emulate that for like the next 2 hours and, do the same. I kind of did that like every day for like months, but I became obsessed with this video, like the whole concert. So
I didn't know about Tony Williams until I was working at a record store in the late 80s after college. And one of the guys that I worked with was a big jazz fanatic. He's a drummer also. And he introduced me to some Billy Cobham stuff like you talked about. And he talked about, and then when Tony Williams played with Miles, I was like, okay, Tony who? It's like, oh my God, I couldn't believe I didn't know who Tony Williams was. But man, he laid like 8 records on me. And the thing that stood out to me was the Believe It record. Oh, yeah. I was just a fan ever since. And he, people ask me what my top 5 drummers are. I say Tony Williams, Tony Williams, Tony Williams, Tony Williams, Tony Williams. I just, I can't play like him. And every time I see footage of him, I'm like, I can't believe it. It's just amazing. Just like everything you described, just very rudimental, but clean, but just he did it in a very unique way. And fascinating stuff. So,
but it was funny because there was always like stories of him, like, because he was playing with Miles when he was 16, and everyone thought he was like this like super like jazz head. And he had like posters of the Beatles like hanging on his walls, and because he was a kid, he emulated Ringo. He wanted to be like Ringo Starr, which is kind of really fascinating. It was so fascinating. I read that in Modern Drummer. I never asked him that. But I read that in Modern Drummer, and they said he had like, photos of like posters of like Beatles in his room.
It's probably why I like his style, because he's not the typical, I shouldn't say the typical jazz player, but that time period, and he was, on the forefront of what they call fusion, and he would play really aggressive and hard, and he had big drums and big cymbals, and I'm like, that is cool. And why do you have to have, I'm going to ask you some questions about jazz and people that are only specifically jazz players, and they just want to emulate things from like 1945 to 1959. Anything after that is not, well, I should say 1969. But it's like he was so unique and so different, and I just liked the way his hi-hats would just flail around, and oh my God, I just love his aggressiveness. So it's interesting you say that his influences were rock people. But let me go back to you. You said
Sure.
that you were not allowed to listen to like rock,
Well, I was listening to,
frowned upon.
I was listening to the Beastie Boys, you know, where we got to write the party and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that, I would like put it. My dad would just be like, I can't listen to this, and he's like, Gregory, if you're gonna play drum, you know, that's when you know you're mad, you know, Gregory, play the drums. You have to like learn this. This is like, these are the guys you got to listen. You know, he sort of just was like, in some ways it was cool because he sort of like put me in a direction to check out some stuff. But the unfortunate part about that is that sometimes musically it was hard for me to connect with people that were my own age. You know, I mean, there was a club out there called Sonny's Place. And part of the reason why I became a musician was honestly because I loved the hang. So I would go to Sonny's Place and I'd be like this 15-year-old kid and play. And I got like accepted, like, oh man, you sound good, kid. You know, come hang out with us at the diner. We're going to get fries and some chicken sandwiches and complain about our wives or whatever they can do, you know, but just talk about music or whatever. And it was just, I felt like a sense of belonging there. And that's sort of like what made me go, yeah, I really want to like pursue this. You know, the music was a lot of it, but a lot of it also was the people that I was connecting with. And I felt that sense of connection with a lot of people that were like, you know, at that time, probably 20 years older than me, but they were still, you know, they were still cool. They didn't treat me like, you know, I don't know. They didn't treat me terribly. They treated me better than people that I went to school with, you know?
So besides Tony Williams and Billy Cobham, who were some of your other earlier drumming influences?
Oh, well, Elvin Jones, for sure. But also like Lenny White. I mean, it was David Garibaldi was probably the biggest because because my dad's a horn player, he always put on like the Tower of Power records and stuff like that. And also, I gotta think. What did I listen to back then? But actually, Tito Puente. My dad played in Tito Puente's band for a little bit, so he was a big influence. Just like it was kind of cool getting like to hear like the Latin stuff and also the the fusion stuff came later, like Chick Corea. You know, Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, and the fusion, like the Airto stuff with Light as a Feather. That was like sort of like senior year of high school. So yeah, I guess Airto would have to be up there. Lenny White, you know, because of the some of that Chick Corea, like Return Forever, Romantic Warrior, stuff like that. Those kind of things were big influences for me back then too. Wow, it's hard to think. That's like 30 years ago now.
So after high school, you were like, you know, I want to play music for a living. I want to play Broadway shows for a living.
I don't know. Actually, that was not the case at all. But I wanted, well, the whole thing about, I guess for me, is you just adapt to your life. Like I was pursuing so like after like college, I was in town playing jazz gigs, but it was just tough to like make a living doing it. You know, it was like I would do like 3-4 gigs, you know, a week or whatever, but I was making like $200, and it's like it's hard to make that stretch, you know. And even though, and those, like some of those gigs were like, you know, you play at the Blue Water Grill for like 6 hours and you're just playing brushes and you can't even hear yourself, and it just didn't feel like musically satisfying. So I did this let me rewind a second. So when I was in college,
Where'd you go to college, by the way?
Queens College.
Okay.
So when I went to Queens College, someone called the school and said, "Hey, I need a drummer for this musical. Can you recommend anybody?" And I was an undergraduate and I was playing all the jazz recitals, and they knew that I would do, I just liked learning music. I didn't necessarily care what it was, but I liked the process of sort of figuring it out. I mean, I always tell people when they ask about like music education and in schools and stuff, it's not so much about being the greatest musician or greatest player when you're teaching these kids, but it's about the critical thinking. You're trying to teach them how to take this page of music and then sort of problem solve it, break it down and do all these different things, and then come back and perform it, right? So anyway, this secretary recommends me to this person. I go out there and I do this musical out in like Bethpage called The It Girl. And, it was like every weekend for like, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And then fast forward like 6 months later, the guy calls me and says, "Hey, this is Jeff. Do you want to do this tour?" I'm like, "What? Okay, sure. What is it?" It's like 9 months tour with the Big Apple Circus. I'm like, "Oh." So he became like this like guy that like he was subbing like Beauty and the Beast in town, and he just music directed this little show. And then he gets this offer to do Big Apple Circus, and then the rest. That's what's got me started on that touring journey, and it was great. I was able to graduate school with no debt and stuff like that. So, and then, the rest is history. But, there's a lot of like, I can trace my career to like certain choices or points, like I'm sure we all can.
Yes. Tell me about playing for like the Big Apple Circus or, any kind of circus in general. I don't know if there is any parallels between playing for the Big Apple Circus and playing for a Broadway show. Is it more like you have to follow the conductor and you have to watch what's going on? Because from what I heard from, I forgot who it was that I talked to a long time ago about this, is that you have to keep playing and then keep playing that groove, and then you see, something happen. You got to hit a splash or hit a crash cymbal as you're doing it, and it's just a very odd thing. So tell me about circus drumming.
Okay, yeah. Well, parallel. The first parallel is get your head out of the book as fast as you can, because the whole thing with circus drumming, and actually my circus drumming and my first touring Broadway show, that skill came in incredibly handy. And I'll get to that in a second. But for circus drumming, just get your head out of the book. You have to watch the acts. Every time the person flips on a trampoline or does something, you just have to watch what's going on and hit all the action and sort of almost not worry so much about the groove, because the action is more important than the grooves themselves. The grooves you play, but the rest of the band is sort of still playing while you got to like do these weird things that may not even be in time at all, or you try to find a way to make it in time, but have like a weird syncopation or like, like you keep, depending on the song, like we did this one thing. It was like a guy bouncing on a trampoline, right? And it was we were playing this song basically called "What a Day for a Daydream." So like like the kind of like a 2-beat kind of thing. And then I'm just like, every time the guy would literally be like, "Greg, when I wiggle my finger like this, I need cowbells and woodblocks, like rolls on the cowbell." And like I'm looking at a monitor that's like, he's like this big on the monitor. He's like, it's like that sort of thing. But like, it's like, well, okay, I have to see what he's doing. So, that's what that gig was. There were other things where like the juggler would be juggling, and he's like, every time I spin around, give me I do like a 5-stroke roll into like a a cymbal, ka-cha, ka-cha. And it doesn't matter like where it was in the group. But the thing that was cool about it is we were playing, this guy, Michael Amendola, wrote the music. So we'd be playing the Cold Sweat groove, but then on top of the Cold Sweat grooves, they'd be playing this monk tune called Bemsha Swing. So it'd be like, right? So we play like this like group, but then like every time the guy would flip around, but
oh my God. Wow.
And it's sort of like got you sort of just comfortable with like sort of like keeping the time going, but just like trying to subdivide. I try to find ways to subdivide where the fills were so I could always get back, But sometimes, it just wouldn't happen. I let the band do it, and then when I knew where they were, I just come back, Depending on the thing, because some of that stuff is all crazy, and but it's all about getting your head out of the book. That's what I'm trying to say. That's my point of the thing. It's just, and when you play a Broadway show, depending on the show, you have to watch the conductor. It's a lot of times with the clicks and stuff, it's a little different, but like, what the show that I'm subbing on now is Aladdin, and it's all just trying to follow the conductor as best you can, and just know that, okay, this is an 8-bar phrase, okay, while you're playing, and try to have as much as you can memorized so you can make adjustments. Now, my first touring Broadway show, the reason why I said it ties together, because the horn player on the Big Apple Circus ended up doing the non-act tour of Fosse. And that whole show is like, when I do this, you're hitting a triangle. Anytime the dancer did something, you had to, the percussion or the drums sort of makes all the hits to really accentuate what the dancers are doing. So, and there was a song called Perk 4, which is just a drum solo. And at one point, the guy does like this like thing where he's like, it's not really a pratfall, but he does like a fall where he's like spinning, and then eventually he stops. So you have to just like look up at the monitor and just like try to like go with whatever he does and stop whenever he stops, So that's like, I was like, oh, this is like the circus, And there was another point where like we were playing Damn Yankees, and every time the dancers would like run and jump and do like a big jump in the thing, you'd have to hit a cymbal. It wasn't actually written in the music when they would do it. It just says watch the video. It was that kind of thing. And I had to replace somebody because there was an issue. So like it was like I had to learn the whole thing in like in a week and a half. And my first gig was, my first rehearsal, quote unquote, was the first show.
Wow.
Yeah, they like teched the show because they were on a layoff. They teched the show that day, and then the first actual performance was that night. But I had to like know it. And that show also, there's that like 15-minute version of Sing Sing Sing, where you're playing get up, and the dancers keeps doing this. It's like hits galore that don't actually make tons of sense musically, but it's when you watch it, you go, okay, So I think that the two things correlated very early for me, as far as like, the hits are almost, the action on stage is almost more important than the music, unfortunately. But that's sort of how the business is a little bit,
So for those people that don't know what it's like being on a tour of a Broadway show, what's a typical week like?
Depends on the tour, but most tours, you travel Monday. Now, if you have a pickup band or you have a self-contained band, those are two different kinds of things. Self-contained is when everybody on the tour travels. A pickup band is when you have to pick up musicians in every city. So that changes a lot of things, because that means if you have a self-contained band, your Tuesday is pretty clear until sound check. So it's kind of nice because you can go out on Monday night and have a night, and especially after a long travel day, you can kind of rest up a little bit. But if you do the other tour, where it's a pickup band, often on my last tour, I did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I would land the plane, would get off the plane, go to the airport, go to the hotel, eat some dinner, and then I'd go to the theater and set up the rehearsal kit. And then, I was also a librarian, so I'd go and hand out the music. And then I would go home, try to get some sleep. And then at like 7 o'clock the next morning on Tuesday, I would go try to set up the actual drums in the pit. And then we'd rehearse from like 9 to 2, right? And then pack everything up, try to get a bite to eat or something. Then we have sound check from like 3:30 to 5. And then you have a couple hours, and then the show is usually at like 7:30. And so it's a really long Tuesday, but then the rest of the week is like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5-show weekend. But then the difference between Broadway and touring also is that you do the 5-show weekend, then you got to pack up your drums, then you have to go back to the hotel and pack up your life, and then go to the airport and, rinse and repeat. So the touring with the pickup bands can be pretty exhausting,
So the worst part, I guess, is the Sunday evening through Tuesday evening. Yeah.
On those tours, it's a lot. It can really wear on you. When you have weeks, like multiple week cities, then it's cool because then you get a Monday off. You kind of like recuperate a little bit. But there are times where the tour is like 1 week. The stop's only 1 week long, and there was one point in the last tour we did like 7 weeks in a row of just 1 weekers. It was, by the time you're like, I'm cool for about the first month, but after like that, you start like going, because you're also playing the same music every day. You got to find ways to like keep it fresh, and it's really just getting through the rehearsal that's hard, because a lot of times it's just, I can get myself up with the performance, but sometimes it's hard to get super focused for the rehearsal, because it's you're still exhausted from the 5-show weekend plus the travel. So it's sort of like, I don't mean I'm like not focused, but it's just sort of like, as far as the amount of focus, I try to save it for the actual shows in a way, if that makes any sense. Like, you got to learn how to pace yourself in a way, because it's just mentally. But I know, at least for me, that's how it was. I don't know about other guys that tour a lot, but for me, on the other tours where it's like just the sound check, it's no problem. It's just 8-show weeks. Even if there's a problem, and a lot of times too with the travel, like traveling, there were weeks where like we were supposed to leave at like 11, 12 o'clock, and there were like problems with the plane or whatever, and we got in at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then still have to do the same setup. It's at like 7 o'clock, get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then you're trying to get through that Tuesday with like very little sleep, So,
and on top of that, when you go to these different cities and you have pickup bands, you're playing with an entirely new group of people, and you have to adjust to them, and especially if you're working with a new percussionist, it could be very, very challenging. Man, so you did the Big Apple Circus, and the first tour was Fosse, you said?
Fosse, yeah, the non-act tour of Fosse, yeah.
And the difference between, to explain to people what a non-equity tour as opposed to an equity tour is, you would say?
Pay?
Say pay is the biggest difference.
It's probably, one of them. The other thing about it is the amount of time you stay in a city, and the cities you go to. They were, and also on Fosse, the first year that I did was like 6 months of what they call one-nighters. So basically, like, you're living on a bus. Like, you stay in a hotel on nights, but then you get up at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock to get on a bus to 8. And then you're like, you go to like Evansville, Indiana, or is it Illinois? I don't even remember. That's what I mean. There's so many cities. I don't even remember like where exactly which states they're in, because there's this whole you get to this point where you're like, what day is it? And then you're driving from there's this like little area in the country that's Midwest. Like, you go to like Huntington, West Virginia, and then you're going somewhere in Ohio, and then you go to Indiana, and then you go. It's never just like boop, 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 like a circle. It's always like you have to go. It's always 8 hours away. It always seems like it's 8 hours away on a bus, or 6 hours on a bus, and it's a lot of like stopping at like strip malls to like just try to get something. So like, and basically on those tours, you're doing, you're dropping your stuff off and then going right to the sound check, set up the drums, and then you get like an hour off and then you do the show. And it's like every day, I'm glad when I did that, I was 25, 26. I don't know if my body would handle that as well now, to be honest, and the union tours, the big thing about the great of the union tours is you get pension and health insurance, all that stuff too, which is great. Like, you gotta work a certain amount of weeks to get that, and you start getting vacation pay. And I remember when I teched Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and I guess it took a couple weeks like to get into the payroll, but it was my first like union like gig like that. And I'd done a couple off Broadway shows at that point and tech them and stuff. But when I got that paycheck, I was like, I was like, that much? Because at that time I was teching the 10 out of 12s and all that stuff too. So like I was like, oh, that's amazing, But I would say also a big difference when I started. It's different now, but when I started, all the people on the union tours were older. Like they tended to be. When I started, they would like when I did Scoundrels. I think I was the only person under 40 in the band. Now pretty much I feel like everyone's under 30.
Oh, another question. If somebody wants to do this and, is in high school or in college and they're like, you know what, I'd love to play a tour of a Broadway show. How does one go about securing a gig on a tour?
Well, I'd say the first thing is you have to let people know that you're interested to do that. The hardest thing about Broadway for me, I think starting was just figuring out the scene, if that makes sense. Like, okay, you come to New York and there's all these shows and all these people there's always musicians, right? But you don't know who's really doing the show. You got to join the union and find out who's doing this. And, and when I was come up, you hear about John Miller, you hear about Michael Keller. Now, the one big advantage that I had was that my father and Michael Keller played in a band together. So, and my dad was really good friends with Michael's brother, Bobby. They both played on Annie together. So there was this whole there's this whole story that we can't really get into on the podcast, but Bobby and Michael have friction. So it sort of helped me, but it didn't help me. But when there was an audition for the Wicked tour back when Gary left to do Tarzan, and then Matt Vanderin was going to take over. They were looking for a drummer. And when Keller called me, he's like, wait, is this Ray German's son? I was like, yes, it is.
Wow.
So like that was kind of like a funny coincidence. But when he called me, he didn't really know who I was, but I got recommended by Tommy Igoe because I was studying with Tommy Igoe at the time. And, and that's actually another thing is that for me, after the Fosse tour, that playing Sing, Sing, Sing every day, my hands, I actually was starting to get arm problems, and so I started studying with Tommy Igoe to just help my technique and just sort of get that stuff all situated. So, thanks to Tommy, I'm still playing today, I think,
So you took over for Matt on
No, what happened was I didn't get the gig.
Oh, okay.
I got the audition. It was actually really cool because I got the audition, and I think that's when Darcy McRae got the Wicked tour. And then, but it's actually, now that I look back on it, it was probably the best thing because I wasn't really ready for the tour. I wasn't ready for that tour, I should say.
Now, why do you think you weren't?
Because when I did Scoundrels, it was like it was sort of a jazz kind of show. And the conductor said to me, Greg, everything sounds really good, but you kind of have a little bit of jazz feet. oh, okay. So basically I was too light on the kick drum. So then like that kind of got me into like starting to play more heel up, and just sort of like, and then I had to learn a few other things. And then the next tour after the Scoundrels was Grease. So that was like, playing more, a little heavier, and it was the Grease that, Clancy had started. So, that same, like those arrangements. So, and that led to me doing 9 to 5. And then eventually 9 to 5 led to Wicked, because Remus heard me play 9 to 5 and was like, oh, you're good. And then he told Keller, and well, actually there was a, what do they call that? The Sitz probe with the orchestra reading. And in the 9 to 5 reading in Nashville, was like Dolly Parton, Stephen Remus, Michael Keller, Bruce Coughlin, and the music director too, Martin Axe. And it just goes to show you do your homework. They reorchestrating the show, so I didn't actually have the music for the show, but I took Sean McDaniel. I wrote Sean McDaniel because I knew he did the book, and I transcribed the whole show. And basically what they meant by reorchestrating the show was they would just took this part and put it over here, put this part over here. It was still the same music pretty much. But we get to this da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like a da-da-da-da. And I just love the way that Sean orchestrated the drum parts. So I just did it exactly like that. And Bruce Coughlin says in front of the whole band, guys, play with Greg. He's nailing it. and that was awesome because he said that in front of all those guys. He said that in front of Dolly Parton, Stephen Remus, Michael Keller. And then 6 months later, Michael Keller called me and said, hey, we'd love you to do the Wicked tour. Are you interested? I was like, yeah. Because my tour, we had just gotten our closing notice. So it was like perfect timing, Yeah. It just goes to show you, like, you do your homework, sometimes you put a little extra and you get a lot back.
A lot of times when people go out on tours, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. Did you come back and seek out opportunities to sub on Broadway?
No, yes or no. The problem with me was that I would do that when we get a closing notice, but then sort of what happened with me is my life goals sort of changed a little bit. I decided I decided like during one of my tours, I came home and I did like one of those like gypsy housing things, and I stayed at this apartment. And I stayed in this apartment and it was like 5 guys in like one bathroom. And I'm like, and they're all like college kids, which is fine. But then there was one night where sorry, I know it's a family show, but one night I get home and there's like a guy like hooking up with a girl on the couch. I'm like,
what?
Oh, I'm just too old for this. It was just one of those things. I was just home on the layoff for like 2 weeks,
It's like, so can I get a break?
Yeah, it's like, right, exactly. And so for me, I was like, at that point, I was like, sort of like, all right, let me see if I do like one more tour, I can actually afford to maybe buy a place, So I that's what I sort of did. I was home for a couple of years and I was doing the wedding band thing, and I was subbing for Jared Schoening. It Should Have Been You, and I was learning Matilda, and then Jay Mack called me to do the If Then tour, and I was sort of that thing where I had some money in the bank, but because I didn't have a job, I couldn't do anything. The way the banks look at us. So I was like, all right, well, if I do another tour or two, and then so in the middle of the If Then tour, Josh Samuels calls me and said, hey man, I got called for this thing, but I sort of have to get married. Are you interested? So I ended up doing the Finding Neverland tour, which also was a chance to work for John Miller, and then that led to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So I've sort of been out of sight, out of mind for a while. So now that the pandemic's happening, that kind of screwed things up as far as, because I don't mind being unemployed as long as things are moving in a certain direction. But the pandemic just kind of made everything like There's no networking. There's nothing. I could write people, but it's like, great to talk to you. We can meet for coffee, but like, I got to kind of like, we can meet for coffee, but nothing's happening. So, but then like unemployment was over. So then I was just grasping at straws and started doing a lot of like educational stuff and stuff. And then out of the blue, John Redsecker say, hey man, can we talk? And I was like, sure. And then he asked me to start subbing at Aladdin, and it's been great. It's been great. So I'm subbing on one show right now.
So the last tour that you did was what?
Oh, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That ended October 2019.
I did a little research and found another podcast that you were on. You were talking about how during the pandemic, just like a lot of people, found other things to do, just like I'm doing this. And you decided to do your own thing. And was it your first album that you produced, or is this just another one of several that you've done?
This is the first, and there's a whole story how it actually happened. When I was doing a lot of jazz things, I was studying with this guy Clarence Penn, who played. He played with Michael Brecker. He played with Weather. I think it was Steps Ahead. Sorry, Steps Ahead for a while. He used to actually play with. There's a really cool picture of his house and playing with Stanley Clarke. And so he toured with Stanley Clarke for a minute too, and I ran into him on the Wicked tour. I ran into him in Seattle. He was playing a jazz festival, and we happened to be there for 6 weeks. And it was not a week. I had to pack up the drums. So I went down to the club, and we sort of reconnected. We hadn't seen each other in like 10 years, because of different scenes and stuff. And then after Wicked was finished, I came home and I took a lesson with him because I was, I always I'm always trying to improve my playing. That's sort of, because there's always some musical obstacle that you're going to have to overcome. Even in a show, any gig that you do is going to be something, that you're going to have to, so it's always best to try to improve your playing, because sometimes, we do these shows, especially on a tour, you can get really complacent with your playing because you're playing the same thing every day for years at a time, but the world keeps moving, so anyway, I took this lesson, and afterwards we went out for coffee to sort of catch up again. And he's like, listen, I think you should do a record. Because one of my other side projects I did was when I was on tour, I always like to keep the creativity going. So I started doing like scoring films for people and stuff like that. So he was like, listen, you already write. So just transfer that writing to jazz. I was like, okay. But at the time, this is 2014, I had just got back up being on the Wicked tour, and I just wanted to see where that momentum would lead me. So I kind of like put it on the back burner. And then when like 5 years later, when Charlie got his closing notice, I sort of had that like, okay, well, I'm over 40 now. Let me see if I can make like a musical statement or something to leave behind. Because at that point I was playing all these shows and stuff, but I don't have anything really documenting what I do outside of a few like little films that I've done where I'm writing the music I'm not even playing, So it was really great. Actually, I reached out to him, and as the show was closing, and I said, are you still interested in doing this record? And this is before the pandemic. This is like July of 2019. And he's like, absolutely, I still want to do it. We'll make it happen. And then we started having pre-production meetings, and we actually booked a date in June of 2020 to do it. But because of the pandemic and everything, the studios were like, we're going to postpone it. And then in the fall, when things started feeling safer, we just jumped in the chance because what was great, the one thing was great about the pandemic is the people that we really wanted were available. When I initially was supposed to do the record in June, we tried to get Donnie McCassin, and he was like, available the day before, the day after, but not the day of the recording. So we were scrambling, looking for like horn players and looking for this and that. And eventually, like, because of the pandemic and everyone just wanted to play and do things, everybody just gave me a day rate. It wasn't completely crazy. So I was like, let's do it. Let's go for it. I already gave a down payment to the studio. So let's do this. Let's make it happen. And then it was great. It was great. It was one of probably the best thing I've ever done for my career, just because now I have something to show people what I do. And when people say, what have you done or whatever, I said, well, I have this. You know, even something on Aladdin, I saw someone I hadn't seen in a while. I'm like, yeah, bro, you did like a big boy record. I don't know what a little boy record would be, but
yeah, exactly. As opposed to the kids record, what the
exactly, like, you know. But it was just, I think it just meant because I have sort of like an all-star lineup, and I wrote all the music, and it got like on. It actually got on like it actually exposed me to like a whole new world of like you know, there's actually like jazz charts. I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing when I started the record. I was just doing it because I wanted to. I had some ideas and I jotted them down and wanted to see what we could do with it, you know, and also like I could show drummers like yourself. I could show John Redsicker, hey, I did this, you know, because I don't have any videos of me playing a show. I have, you know, I have a resume that says what shows I've done, but it's hard to get traction without people hearing what you do, as opposed to, you know, just knowing that you did something. Because a lot of guys are like, you know, oh, but you did that on the road. I did Wicked, but on the road, you know. What's been really great for Aladdin for me, actually the best part for me, more so than just playing the show and doing it and having them be happy, is now all these New York musicians are hearing me do it. You know, and one of the percussion subs, we both know, but I'll leave his name out of it. You know, we played a couple weeks ago, and he texted me in the middle of the show. He goes, "Greg, you sound so good, man. Like, you're playing like a perfect show." I'm like, well, it's just, but you know, but that made me happier than anything. You know, the fact that, and it's someone I really respect a lot. You know, and even the horn players are like, man, it feels great, man. We love having you come in, and just having like that kind of positivity and reinforcement. You know, subbing is such a thankless job. You know, you do the show, and it's like, okay, man, so, you know, the fact that anybody even says hi to you is like a miracle. Well, so this guy sent me this text, was like, it meant the world to me. You know.
No, speaking of subbing, a lot of people don't know what it takes in order to become a sub. If you could tell people what to do, or what you should always do as a sub, what would you tell them?
Try your best to sound exactly like the person you're going in for. You know, two of the biggest compliments I ever got was one when I subbed for you at Altar Boys, Jason Lafredo. You sent me that text. You said, Clayton, Greg sounds like you. His pocket is like yours. And I was like, whoa. And you sent me that text. You know, it was my first show. I was so nervous. You know, I was afraid, like, you know, because that was like all V drums, and it's like, oh God, I hope I don't hit the actual little explosion sound on one point or whatever it was, you know. But just like the fact that he said that, and then you were nice enough to send me that, because look, Jason was like, yeah, great job, man. And then you know, you never know what people really think. Sometimes you really never know what people really think. But the fact that he sent you that text, you know, that meant the world to me. And then a couple weeks ago, I was at Aladdin, and like I'm in the hallway, and I say hi to someone, and like, oh, who are you? I'm like, I'm the drummer. And she goes, oh, I thought John was here. You know, like just little things like that. But it like that's the stuff that makes me smile from, you know, ear to ear, because it's like, okay, like I did the job, and they didn't even know that I was there. You know, sort of that invisibility thing. I mean, you know, certain people like know that you're there because you're sitting next to you, but you know, but like someone like the cello player that's like just a sub themselves say, oh, I thought John was here. That was like, wow. I don't think I slept much that night because I was so excited. You know. because you've subbed, so you put all that work and energy into the thing, and and things just happen. Even John Redsecker called me like the day before my first show. He goes, "Listen, Greg, it's I know you're nervous. You're probably going to hit something weird at some point because you're just not. You can work on everything as much as you can, but it's just in the heat of the battle, things happen. Don't let it throw you if it does. I had a pretty good show, my first show, but it was just having him, knowing his support was there, and then the band everyone was really cool, and it was one of the best experiences I've had ever subbing. I was up there with Altar Boys was up there too, because Jason was so nice.
What would you say a drummer should never do as a sub on a Broadway show?
Never do? Like, don't come and do your own thing. Like you said, you might think it's the hippest thing in the world, but like, if it doesn't serve the purpose of the show, what are you doing? There's even a couple.
So wait, you mean I can't do Tony Williams' Swiss triplets in Aladdin?
Well, there is a 4-bar drum solo at the end. So
damn. Okay. I guess you could.
but we have to pick your moments. No, but I would say try not to draw too much attention to yourself. Don't, just treat everybody with a lot of respect. Don't come in there like you own the place, because you're really a guest. You're a guest in someone else's house in a way, you wouldn't go to someone's house and move their stuff around, I did have one show, like, I'll give you an example. I did have one show where before Friend Like Me is all this like Genie music where you're playing like Gene Krupa stuff on the floor tom. But the floor tom, the leg came loose and started falling away from me. So I'm like, I finished the thing and I'm just like, but then immediately after the show, I texted John and said, John, the drum started falling. I tried to put it back as best I could. Just come in a few minutes early and just check it out. And, John's like, I appreciate you letting me know. And also like, because you're just trying to take care of business when you're doing the show. At the end of the day too, it's not like your butt on the line, it's their butt. They're the ones that are going to get in trouble if there's the main issue. Okay, don't have this guy come in again, but then like, I'm sure you came back and you probably heard like from the actors, or what was up with that guy, right? That even being on tour, like, like that happens if something weird happens, anything unusual that's not the show what they're used to hearing, they freak out about, not just the actors, but the band too, so, you're just trying to keep with show stuff. It's just about consistency. Everything you could do to be consistent. And I would say one thing also on a tour, it's not about being consistent musically. It's about being consistent as a person. Like, you don't want to show up one day and be like real moody and, and then be like, oh yeah, just be cool every day and you'll be fine. But if you're one of these people, everyone's entitled to have a bad day, but you don't want that to be, oh, should I say hi to that person today? Are they going to be weird? Because that's almost as much as affects your reputation as you're playing. I would say that for sure. And Broadway too.
How did you keep things musically fresh or consistent being on tour for such long periods of time? Well,
some people like to make fun of me for this, but I always like to show up like an hour before the gig and warm up and work on stuff. Even if it's like, for example, Tommy Igoe's Lifetime warm-up stuff, just like getting the hands ready. And then like, I'm always listening to music. So a lot of times I'm just trying to figure out, oh, what are they doing there? But to keep stuff fresh during the show, sometimes I'll try, let me try the bass drum pedal, like a little different spot in the pedal today. Slightly different. Not enough that's going to affect the show, but it's going to affect how it feels to me. It's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to be dragging with the click, but it's just like, oh, there's a little different tension if I play up just a little bit or play a little bit down, and maybe I'll get a little louder sound, or just little. I find like a way to stay engaged is to play little game when you do it every day. Not when you're subbing, but when you do it every day, just play little games with yourself as far as how perfect can I make this crescendo? How can I really bring out this dimension? You know, and you pick your spots, you know, but that helps you keep everything flowing and your mind active, you know. Like, I mean, I see some people that are like watching, like, you know, sports and sporting events during the show, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but like, it's kind of like, why are you here? You know, like, we're trying to, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm like, get off my lawn when it comes to that. But I'm also like as a musician, like, I don't know. I was a musician that sort of like bums me out because I'm putting 100% in. You know, I mean, there's days where I don't, and on the tour, there's days where you don't feel 100%, but you still have to try. You know, the effort never goes below a certain level. It's just some days, like on that Sunday matinee, you might just be struggling a little bit, like, because, you know, you just finished the show at 11 o'clock and you didn't sleep well the night before. You know, there's a lot of variables that also, you know, the road life is all about adjusting and doing the best you can. You still got to get through a 2-show day, but it's never, the thing with me is that it's, with the touring and stuff, the music is never boring. It's just sometimes it's more challenging because of various things. You know, it's like your 7th time doing it, and, you know, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I did Wicked, you know, there's a lot of those like scenes where I'm just doing like wind chimes and the Wicked Witch of the East, you know, and, you know, I'd have a book out ready to, you know, in between, like when I had like long rests, I would like, you know, but that also kept me mentally engaged too. You know, it was never like reading anything that was like super deep where I would forget to do a cue. You know, it was like, you know, it was just like little, like something like Bill Bryson, like where it talks about like all the different ways you can get killed in Australia or something, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, and then you hear like, it's like, oh, time to get ready, put the book down, grab the sticks, you know, like, you know, here's some kind of confrontation on stage. Okay, let's do it. Okay, here we go. And then you play, and then it's cool. And then it's like a 3-hour show doesn't feel like an eternity. You know,
what advice would you give to someone who wants to do the things that you've already done, like do tours or sub on Broadway shows? What would you tell somebody? It's like, you know what, kid, this is what you need to do.
That's a great question. Learn as much music as you can. That's the first thing. And then also, like I was sort of implying, like, get your people skills together too. Like, a lot of times we musicians, we spend so much, and I'm guilty of it too. We spend so much time working on our craft, hanging out by ourselves, that like we forget that like other people, you know, we have to interact with people in the band, and we have to getting started. You have to meet all these people, and you have to try to make a good impression on everybody, and just sort of learn how to fit in. You know, that's a big thing. I mean, that's something I honestly struggled with in my 20s, just trying to figure out how that all works. You know, how to be a good hang. You know, how to, you know, how to navigate personalities, I guess would be a good way to phrase stuff like that. Because, you know, you meet some people, and some people are just entitled, and some people are obnoxious, and, you know, and some people can really get under your skin, but you still have to like try to not let that get to you and still make music at the end of the day, you know? And some people are really great. I mean, some people are really fun, and you love them, and those are the people you try to gravitate towards. But, you know, I think part of it too is I know that I want to be someone that people gravitate towards, you know, not be someone that is off-putting. I think as I get older, I realize how important that is more and more, you know? But yeah, I learn as many musical styles as possible. You know, because like, I mean, especially now, I feel like the shows are getting more specialized. You know, like even a couple years ago, there was like In the Heights, and then like the Gloria Estefan show, and you know, and then there's like Come From Away, where the guy's playing like I forgot the drums. Is it a bodhrán or the percussionist? I was playing like that, like a frame drum, all those like different, you know, and Larry's playing all those like different little like grooves that, you know, I've never really heard anywhere else. You know, but then also at the same time, you know, you also have like your shows that are like straight ahead jazz, and you're playing a big band, and then you have the other ones where you're playing a pop gig, and then, you know, you did the one with the Temptations, and then, you know, Tina, and then MJ, and, you know, so the shows are getting more and more specialized, especially with all these like the bio shows, you know. So like, you know, and then if you get a call like that, just listen to that stuff as much as you can. That's what's one thing that's great about the subways. You just put those headphones in, you know, you could really kind of like, you know, I live in Inwood, so it's like a good 45 minutes to listen to music, you know, there and back, you know, so that's an hour and a half of music listening to every day, you know, like, you know, and if you play like Little Shop of Horrors or something, that's like a lot of doo-wop stuff. So like learn that's, you know, stylistically, there's all these different things that we can check out as musicians and drummers, and you know, and then the more versatile, the more well-rounded you are, the more chances you have of being able to fit in musically into a band as well. You know, I mean, especially because you're doing readings, like especially when you do readings and you're creating stuff, you have to have a palette to choose from. You know, if someone says, "Hey, can you play this like so and so?" You have to sort of have an understanding of what that is, what he means, that like interpreting what the director or whoever's trying to tell you to do that, you know.
The kind of equipment that you use, are you a very particular person? It's like, I only use Yamaha drums, I only use Zildjian cymbals and this brand and this, that. What do you use generally?
I try to use whatever's best for that situation, to be honest. I don't have a lot of endorsements or anything like that. Like, for example, if I have like a jazz gig, I'm going to use my Carope cymbal and this other cymbal that I use. But if I'm doing a show gig, I want to use something that's a little brighter, so I'll use like a, you know, depending on what the show is, right? But like I'll use something that's like a Zildjian cymbal that's a little brighter. But then like I really like those evolution cymbals that Dave Weckl used, that he sort of helped create. So I was using those on the road for a while. You know, so I sort of like, as long as I'm happy with the sound, it's cool. I'm cool. I mean, I've toured with Yamaha drums, and I've also toured DW drums on my last two tours. I used my DW series drums, but I couldn't. I'm so bad, I couldn't even tell you what model it is. I just know they sound good.
I hear you. I'm kind of the same way. Now you have a album out. It's on CD, 8-track, cassette, LP. And can people find it on iTunes and other places like that?
Yeah, it's called Greg Germann, Tales of Time. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes. You can contact me. I have CDs. If you want a signed CD, I'd be more than happy to send you one. I still have a couple boxes of CDs, so, you know, because who has CDs these days, right? But if you want to, like, you know, if you want the actual like thing to hold in your hand and read the liner notes and all that stuff, I have that. You know, and also I just did a gig Monday, so I'm going to have some of the music from there on YouTube. If you want to check out my website is greggermanmusic.com. My YouTube is, I think it's Greg German Music as well on YouTube. You can follow me on all the socials as well. German Greg on Instagram. You know, feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions. I'm all for, or Clayton, you know, reach out to your, you know, Broadway Drumming 101, you know, is that your Instagram?
Yeah. Yes. Broadway Drumming 101. Or me to if you have any follow-up questions, if you're curious about this, you know, if you want like a more in-depth answers or anything, I'm down to help whoever needs the help. You know, as long as you're cool and respectful, then I'm good too. Do you give drum lessons?
I do. I haven't in a while, but I have like one student right now. But it's just hard in New York because my practice space, I'm only in there 3 hours a day. And I sort of, when learning shows, if you run a show, that's 2.5 hours right there at least. So, plus you got to set it up. So it's hard to have the time to do. I mean, I would love to do it if a student's like, oh, you can come to my house, I have a drum set. Bingo, let's do it. but it's hard to be like, come to my space, because it's just, I only have 3 hours a day. I'm only allowed to be in there 3 hours a day right now. So
upcoming shows where you're promoting your CD, your album. Do you have anything coming up soon?
No, I just did one at Rockwood on Monday though. And that's what's going to be on that's going to be on YouTube, because my girlfriend Julia Rohano videotaped the whole thing.
Oh wow!
So I'll send you links when I put them up if you want to check
great.
it. What was kind of fun about this show was that we did a couple things from the record, but then the last couple months I've been writing music as well. So I've been just it was kind of like a workshop on Monday, like sort of saying, all right, so if I do this, does people respond favorably? Did they like this song? And the response was like overwhelmingly, yeah, keep going. And that's what you want, So yeah, I'll put that on there. The thing about my record is it's like modern odd time jazz, but I'm trying to not have it be like so like what? Oh, that's so weird. But it's more about the melody, and I think that's what with playing so much theater is it gives you an understanding of like how the music works to tell stories, and that's sort of was my goal with Tales of Time. That's why I call it Tales of Time, right? So Tales of Time being like, stories with odd time signatures. Sort of like my way of cleverly trying to disguise that. Or not so clever.
Do you think that you'd record a new album pretty soon?
Not soon, but hopefully in a couple of years. Yeah, that would, I have to have enough material to do it and the capital. So, with the pandemic and everything, it kind of slowed things down, and we'll see. I mean, there's a small percent chance that I might end up on tour again. Then I could definitely do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, would you take another tour?
Right now, I would, because things have been really rough this past year. Just to sort of get my savings and stuff back on track, because it's been really 2.5 years with not a gig for me. So, I sub, but it's sporadic. Like, you'll have 1 week where you'll do like 4 shows, and then you won't have another one for like 6 weeks. I mean, actually, the bass player says, "Oh, is your 6 week up? 6 week up?" Has it been 6 weeks already?
I know. The thing about subbing, this is one thing people don't understand. When you do all the work to sub on a show, you practice it for a month and a half. For me, it's no less than a month.
Right.
Then you go in to play the show and you knock it out. And you're like, man, everybody's great, man. You sound great. You come in for the second one, like maybe 2 weeks later, and you sound great. And then 4 weeks go by, 5 weeks go by. Then you go back in. You're like, oh man, you got to relearn it again.
Yeah.
Then you don't go back in for another. It's like it's a roller coaster. But if you accept the challenge of being a sub,
what I find works for me. Everyone that already subs knows this probably, but what I do is I try to review it once a week. If I don't get called, like I'll be like, Monday would be my day to just sort of like, even if it's not going over the entire show, go over just like certain songs in the show, just to like that maybe have a lot of choreography in them, because that's what you're going to forget. You're going to forget to put that stick down. You're going to forget to like do some like little thing, like I'll have to mute the gong or something, whatever it is that like when you're in that heat of the battle, because you're watching the conductor, and it's sort of like hard to get your head out of the book. It's hard to do that when you're nervous. And so like what I try to do is if let's say I don't get called for a while, I'll just start relearning, because I will get called again unless the show closes. You know, our job as a sub is to sort of stay ready. But then again, there's those guys like that are something like 6 or 7 shows. And I don't know how they maintain that. Like some guys do 2 different shows in a day. That's mind blowing to me. Like I know at the end of the day it's music and we do what we do, but you know, I couldn't imagine like what it would be like to like someone like a percussion book of Cinderella and then play Wicked that night. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I never got to that point. It's a lot of work. And just like doing a bus and truck tour, it's easier when you're in your 20s. And subbing and having all that stuff in your brain, it's easier when you're in your 20s and 30s. I'm in my mid 50s right now, and having one show was like, and it's my own show. I'm like, oh my God. No, I'm just kidding.
How many times did this repeat?
Oh, man. Well, it was great talking to you. Thank you for taking time out. And hopefully you're back on a tour very soon. I can't wait. You know, I should really check out your album. I'm going to listen to it today. And yeah, I'm really curious to check it out. And thank you, Greg Germann, for being a part of Broadway Drumming 101.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. Head over to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page where you'll find unedited conversations that I've had with some of your favorite musicians. On the YouTube page, you're going to find bonus content that I don't feature on my Instagram page or here on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and click on that little bell at the top so that you'll be notified when a new video is uploaded. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for more.